Shaw, what would you say after all these years on the planet is your glorious purpose? Have you found it yet, or are you still looking for it?
All these years.
All these you're 2 decades on this planet right now, Shaw.
That's right. I'm only
How
20. Yeah, I'm only This
Shaw,
beard is I
prematurely
colored it
gray.
this way. It's
Oh,
not.
okay, colored
Yeah,
it, yeah.
yeah. It's just a
So,
look, It's trendy. What's my glorious
glorious.
purpose? My glorious purpose is to podcast with Vactor.
Woo! Now
Wow.
that
No. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that
I
was
would
a
say,
joke,
yeah,
okay.
probably. I mean, I think it's to be creative. My glorious
Yeah,
purpose is to put out things, to create and share
I
is my
love it.
purpose. Yeah.
I love it, Shaw. And
Thank
that's
you.
what we're doing today
Yeah.
on the Vactor-Verse. We're sharing our glorious purpose with everyone, talking about the season finale. Oh, actually, this is most likely the series finale for Loki. Season 2, episode 6, Glorious Purpose, which was also the title of season 1, episode 1. So the
Yes.
Ouroboros loop continues.
That was
What
my first note, and you
Oh,
took it
yeah.
away from me.
Ah,
Gosh darn it.
t
That was my
talk
bit of
about it, Shaw.
trivia.
Talk
Not
about
sure if you know this, but
it.
yeah.
Yeah, what did you think about that, Shaw, when you saw that title of Glorious Purpose? What was the first thing you
Well,
thought about?
I mean, I thought it was on its own, it's a brilliant title for the episode because that's the when you equate like a Loki, like that's his thing, right? I am burdened with glorious purpose. Like that's him. But what I didn't catch until the second time, the rewatch that I did last night was because when you pull up Disney Plus, it automatically like sends you back to like the first season a lot of times.
Yes, right.
And so I saw the first season, the first episode, and it said "Glorious Purpose," and I was like, "No way! It did the thing. It's like a circle."
They did it. It's like
So,
poetry, it rhymes, Shaw.
yeah, right.
I also was loving that. When I saw that Glorious Purpose, I said, "This is the snake eating its own tail," and perfectly wraps up and sums up
Yeah.
this journey that Loki has been on since episode 1. And Shav, I really want to get your thoughts on this episode of Loki, the finale of Loki. I'm
Ooh.
just gonna have some clips playing in the background, so don't mind that, Shav.
Okay,
But
sounds good.
what did you think about this finale for Loki?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. From the beginning of the episode, it started off with such a cool and I think super appropriate thing with having that Marvel theme and the graphics that support it all done in reverse. I mean, it reminded me of like the idea of the Beatles song you play backwards and it says Paul is dead. Like that whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
like I was wondering, like, oh, this is the Marvel theme backwards. This is what it sounds like. It still sounds really cool. Like that's really really cool. So that was such a great touch because he was going back in time and trying again, trying to fix what went wrong. And it's a great premise. You and I both love time travel, and we get to
Yes.
really see it in full effect this episode.
Oh yeah. And I think that might be the reason why Loki is my favorite MCU Disney Plus show of all time, right above WandaVision. I think Loki having this time travel aspect, going through all the different variants. So you have not only time travel, but also like multiversal stuff.
Oh
You
yeah.
put those two together, Shaw, and it's like a peanut butter and Shaw sandwich. It's like two
Mm.
great tastes that taste great together. I love it. I'm right there with you, Shav. I had a blast with this show overall, and I think this might be the best finale. It's hard to tell because all these Disney Plus shows are just getting 1 season. So Loki being the first to get 2 seasons, I wonder in the future how that's gonna go, but it was a perfect finale for me. Like, it wrapped up
Absolutely.
all of Loki's, and specifically Loki. There was I feel like they left a lot of little threads for, let's say, the TVA and some of the other things. Brad and his timeline, like a lot of stories, they left kind of hanging. But Loki, if I'm specifically thinking about Loki's story and journey, I felt like they wrapped it up perfectly. So that was what I was there for. That was what I came to see, and I had a great time.
Yeah.
while doing it, Shaw, so I think
Do you
this is
think,
fantastic.
after watching it a second time and seeing where we leave Loki, and by the way, like from like the 30-minute mark on, the episode does a really great job of sort of indicating to you in a very subliminal way what will be Loki's decision. Like
Mm,
we and all like the mental chess that he's doing right now to sort of figure out like what is it gonna take to beat He Who Remains at this game,
right.
and try to destroy and rebuild into something that's somehow better. But I mean, by the end of it, it's both, I think, a beautiful ending and also an extremely depressing ending.
Yes, 100%. I was feeling that because they had already set up earlier, and this is the key. They had already set up earlier in the season his one thing that he did not want was to be alone. And that's what he is at the end of this series, at the end of this episode. He is alone. He could be there for eternity. Like we don't know
Yeah.
how long Loki's going to live. And that hit me like a ton of bricks because I don't know, I don't think I've ever told you this, Shaw, but that might be my number one fear in my life. And I can't think of like being in solitary confinement or being
Mm.
in jail or prison where you're alone and you're cut off from human connection. That to me is like the worst form of torture. And sometimes I think about this is where my mind goes, Shaw. Sometimes I think about being buried alive and think about
Ooh.
what, like if you're trapped in a box and I'm very claustrophobic and it's like you can't move, you can't get out. Like that would be my personal hell. So when I was watching this episode and thinking about Loki had the same type of thing that I have, where human connection, my family and my friends are the most important thing to me in my life, and so that hit me 100%. He took on that burden and that sacrifice for the good. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, right? Like that to me was a huge triumph, and his hero's journey, going from somebody who was selfish and only cared about himself to now at the end of this journey
Yeah.
from episode 1 to this episode, now he cares about other people. He is selfless rather than selfish. So that hit me, Shaw, very
Yeah.
hard.
Well, and I think it's also a testament to the character of Loki because no matter what variant he found that compassion. He found that empathy. Like in the iteration of him where he dies in Infinity War at the beginning. Spoiler. Like he sacrifices himself to try to save Thor. He does the right thing. And he does the right thing in Ragnarok too.
Oh
And
yeah.
um to see that this variant is also capable of that amount of dynamic change over the course of 2 seasons is fantastic as well.
Yeah.
And I think Mobius, you mentioned burden, and Mobius says something to that effect in his last interactions with Loki, where he says, "There's no comfort. You choose your burden." And I thought about
Mm,
that as a parent because
yes.
sometimes when it gets really hard, when parenthood gets really difficult and fathering to kids, when you have like almost no help and you're trying to make ends meet and you've got, the job is demanding and everything is feels like it's like piling on top of each other.
Yes. Yep.
And you think, oh man, it would be so much easier if I didn't have all these additional things to worry about, if I didn't have kids or I wasn't in a relationship or I didn't have this type of a job. But those people who are on the other end of that have their own burdens and their own things.
Right.
And I was like, that line really like stuck with me, and it said you choose your burdens. So like there is no path that is pure comfort.
Right.
You choose your burden, and I think that what you choose defines you. And Loki chose the burden. His glorious purpose was in fact a burden as well, because he has to, in order to save the people he cares about, he has to remove himself from their lives completely
Right.
and isolate himself um, in a place that no one can reach.
Right.
So
That is 100% relatable because
yeah.
in life, as I've found on my 2 decades on this planet, Shaw, I have found that everything in life is a series of choices, and it's the result of your choices that you've made earlier in your life. Like everything I've thought about has been something, everything is also about planting seeds to then bloom and blossom into something else.
Right.
And you could think about investing, you could think about your children, you can think about your relationships with your significant others, your friends, family. Everything is about choices you make in the past, and then how do they then go forward and bloom from those things. So I've been trying recently to make the best choices possible and have, thinking about future Vactor rather than just present Vactor. So that was very relatable to me. All of those choices that Mobius was talking about. And what were your thoughts actually on Mobius's kind of ending, because he got a chance to finally see himself on the timeline, which this whole series he had been saying, "Oh, I don't want to see that. I don't care."
Right.
Out of sight, out of mind. What did you think about the way they wrapped up Mobius's storyline?
I loved it. I loved it. There was one aspect of it that I think would have been a really great final send off, and it would have also made for a really great end credit scene because the show did not have one. But I think that it would have been awesome if we saw him on a jet ski. Exactly. Yes. If the end credit scene was him actually renting like a jet ski and being on the water and experiencing it for real for the first time. Um I think like and just like the pure like excitement, like the way he looks in this clip, like that would have been such a funny end credit scene, which would have been a
Mm,
nice like stark contrast from how the show ended. And it would have been a nice palate cleanser because the last thing we see is Loki looking potentially remorseful. Like
yeah.
he looks content, but he also looks like he's got that sense of longing, right? Like he knows that this is a circumstance that he had to do, but and he I mean he Loki attempted any of the other possible options on the table, making this one his last one. In fact, there's a line in this where um he's it's when he's sparring with Sylvie right before she kills he who remains, and she says something like, you just want a throne, you just want a throne. He's like, that's the last thing I want. And what is the last thing he gets? A throne. He pushes this off, he pushes off that glorious purpose, um to try to save his friends in any other way possible. But he knows he can't kill Sylvie, right? So like he's left with two choices. One, he has to kill a friend and a fellow variant, or he has to sacrifice what he wants for the greater good of everyone else, including his friends. Like, can you imagine spending centuries learning something only for it to not work? That to me was, I mean, there's no greater hero in the MCU.
Right. That
Like,
was, yeah. To me,
no,
that
go
was
ahead. I was going
a
to say, there's no
great,
greater hero.
yeah, that was a great moment, and also kind of calls back one of my favorite movies of all time, Groundhog Day. And you think about, there's like a website out there that theorizes how long Bill Murray is in that loop in
Oh,
Groundhog Day, and they come to the conclusion it could have been hundreds of years. Like for him to learn all the skills that he learned, they said it could be he could have been in that loop for 100 years. So
wow.
us as mortals, that is like mind boggling to think about. We don't know exactly how long the Asgardians live. That could just be 30 days to him, right? Like to his equivalent living hundreds of years or centuries. It could have been just a blip on his timeline. But, boredom still is a factor, I think. And so that is, like I said, it's just crazy to think about what you would do for hundreds of years and then have it blow up in your face and like, you know what? You could have skipped all that and just gone straight to, if you had, obviously he didn't know, but hindsight being 2020, I did think that was kind of funny. And obviously that was played for a joke with the centuries later, like OB saying, "Oh, it'd take you centuries, decades, centuries." So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
comedy was great, and it was very kind of thought provoking and like, man, if I was in that situation, what would happen? So I actually love
Yeah.
that
I would
aspect.
argue as well that Loki exists outside of time um, now. So the standpoint of like time passing,
Will he
not
ever?
the case. So being a god that he is and being outside time, I would venture to say that uh, he's not like, even though Tom Hiddleston will age, that Loki in that moment, that is what Loki will like. That is how he will be going forward, unless they
Hmm.
bring him back for something else. I don't know. Do you
Yeah,
see
and
him
it's
coming back in anything? I wanted to ask. Like, to me, bringing him back would, unless it's something really epic, it feels like it would be a cheat. Like,
I think that's going to be the same as the Tony Stark Robert Downey Jr.
yeah,
effect because we've seen a lot of rumors recently that Marvel is talking to him about coming back for Secret Wars, and I could see both ways. One way it could be detrimental because you're taking away the impact of I am Iron Man and him sacrificing for the universe. But then the other half of me is like, man, I really do want to see him again. And so that is just me selfishly like, I want more. But what does it, in the grand scheme of things, what does it bring back, right? What does it accomplish to bring back either Tom Hiddleston as Loki or Tony Stark as Iron Man? So I could see both ways. Me personally, I think I fall on the side of I want to see him back because I love both of their performances so much as Iron Man and as Loki. Now, it's crazy the journey Loki has gone on. He's actually similar in age to me. And I was like, man, he was 29 when he took on the role, and now he's 42. And I was like, dang, we've been
yeah,
going across this long journey with him. But from I mean, even he was kind of a fan favorite. Even from the beginning, people were like, "He's one of my favorite villains." But now I think he's crossed over, just like he has in the comics. He's no longer just a straight up villain. Now he's much more of an anti-hero, much more of like, let's say, a Punisher or a Deadpool. Like people think of him as a hero now in the
yeah.
comics, and I like that journey that he's gone on. And Tom Hiddleston's performance is a huge part of that. So he's one of my favorite aspects of the MCU at this point. And this show came at the right, exact, great time, the perfect timing, because the MCU this year in 2023, I think we talked about it on our last episode, or I'm sorry, we talked about it on our Marvels review, which you should check out if you have not. Shoff and I talked about the Marvels, but we also kind of talked about the grand scheme of the MCU and what's going on right now in 2023. And I would say probably along with, I mean, if you count Across the Spider Verse, Guardians of the Galaxy, and then Loki are like the three things that I would hold up as this is what was amazing in 2023. So Loki just like it hit at the right time for us. Now, Shav, was there anything that I talked a little bit about the dangling plot threads that they kind of left a little bit of Victor Timely, like I
Hmm.
said, um, Brad, and some of the TVA agents. Was there anything that you kind of felt disappointed in this finale of they didn't focus enough on for the show
Uh,
in general?
Renslayer, Renslayer.
That
We
was a
do get,
huge,
yeah, we
huge
get
one.
a little glimpse of where she ended up, which she was pruned, so she ended up in the void. That makes perfect sense. Um, and we see off in the distance a glimpse of a pyramid and a sphinx, and I assume that that's a nod to Rama Tut,
Very
another king
possible.
variant. And then we see she's startled by this purple light, which I think the consensus is that it's Eliath, but
Yes, right.
but that's not 100% clear because she's startled and she's afraid at first, but then she's not. So either she recognizes Eliath or Eliath maybe recognizes her since she was alongside He Who Remains, and he had weaponized Alioth. So maybe Alioth remembers her, and they're gonna, in a sense, work together to get
Very
her out of
possible.
there. Um,
I think this image is perfect of Kang and
yes,
Ravonna both having the knives at each other's throats, and they're using the technology and
yeah,
abilities. Um, but that was a huge plot thread for me. That was like we had set her up. First of all, we didn't even get her until halfway through the season, and then she had a episode specifically focused on her. And then the rest of the time, it was like, oh, here's a clip of her, and then there's a
yeah,
clip of her. It was like,
yeah.
where is the resolution of the multiversal war? Her being a general in Kang's army, like I think they wanted us to be like, oh, that was a breadcrumb, and then we're going to see more in Kang Dynasty or something else. But now I'm not so sure we are going to get that.
Yeah,
So
hard to say. Hard to say what Marvel's going to do. I mean, Loki is being received super well. So, I mean, I guess it's all going to really hinge on the outcome of the trials involving Jonathan Majors. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Regardless of any of the allegations that I'm not really going to speak on because I don't have enough information, and anybody who is speaking on it also doesn't have enough information. But what I do have enough information to say is that he's a phenomenal actor, and what he's given us these past two seasons really, really has demonstrated that. Even though Victor Timely was not a character that I liked from the get go, and I felt maybe some of the mannerisms were a little contrived. There's a moment in this final episode where He Who Remains is doing an impression of Victor Timely, and I'm like, this is mind-boggling. So imagine that you play both characters. You're doing an impression of one character, doing who's or you're playing a character doing an impression of another character who you also have more like realistically portrayed. So like he had to purposely like do an impression of him, but not do it so well that it was clearly Victor Timely. Like it was enough to be a nod to Victor. Like that kind of stuff is nuts. I think of from a voice acting perspective, Mel Blanc, like
yeah,
um, doing an impression of like Bugs Bunny, uh, but is it Elmer Fudd? Like he's like doing an impression of one of the other, like they're
yes,
dressed up as
yes,
each other. Like,
yes.
or maybe it was Daffy Duck. I can't remember the details, but like he's doing an impression of one dressed as the other, but still like the like essence of the person who he really is playing is like coming through and bleeding through, but there's also other like characterization. I'm like, that kind of stuff is mastery of craft. So um no matter what Jonathan Majors did or didn't do, I personally hope that he is not guilty of these things. But if he is, all I can say is he's a phenomenal actor. So
That really is a testament to his acting ability, that one character like you despise, and then one character you love, like, or one version of the character,
yeah,
one variant you love, one character you despise. That I think is a testament to his ability to kind of morph into each one and give you something different upon each variant. And I did think that was funny when he made fun of Victor Timely, which, how much of that was his choice and how much of that was the direction? Because it's almost funny to be like, "Hey, you're making fun of your own choice that you made to do that tick." So I thought that was funny. But getting He Who Remains in this episode was fantastic for me, because that's what I loved about season one,
yeah,
and where it ended was He Who Remains is a huge threat. Like he felt ominous, imposing, and like he is in full control the entire time. The whole conversation back and forth between them of like, what makes you think this is the first time we've had this conversation, and him like just being having complete mastery and control. Oh, you haven't learned how to stop time yet. Like any moment, any second that He Who Remains is on screen in this, I was glued to my television. I was
oh
like,
yeah,
this is the guy right here. And that's who I want in Kang Dynasty. That's who I want to be this the overarching villain of a good story. And what I wanted out of Quantumania was He Who Remains. So I'm really hoping that there is more to come from Jonathan Majors. At this point, when we're recording right now in November 2023, there's so many ways it could go, but we'll
Yeah.
we'll see as it unfolds. But Shaw, this season has been fantastic, and maybe this series, like I said, we don't know if we'll ever get another thing. But if this is where Tom Hiddleston ends his journey as Loki, I am satisfied. Um, Anything else on this series or this episode that you want to talk about?
It's the best Disney Plus show for Marvel, bar none, hands down. There's no comparison. There's no close contender. This is the peak, and it probably will stay the peak. I don't see how anything could top it.
Yeah.
It was perfect. It was perfect in every way.
Excellent. Well, what are your thoughts on Loki overall? If you want to talk just about this episode or just in the series in general, we're very, very curious to know what you guys thought. Leave us a comment down below. We can always use your feedback, and we always enjoy hearing from you, the listener and the viewer. If you're so inclined, we have a way that you can thank us by giving us super thanks down below. That's just a small donation that can help us out here on the channel. Give us some more Miss Minutes like technology so we can improve the show. But I'm always grateful to anyone who is watching this. If you're watching this right now, I'm grateful to you. So thank you very much. Shoff, thank you for joining me this whole series, this whole
Thank you.
season, I should say. You have been a great co-host and a fantastic person, Shaw. So
Thank you
thank
so
you very
much.
much. And I
Likewise.
love your Loki, alligator Loki shirt that you're wearing. Is
I love this shirt. I love this shirt. My daughters love this shirt too. Every time I wear it, they're like, they have no idea what it is, but they love it.
Yes, that is perfect. Stay tuned in the Vactor-Verse. We've got more Invincible reviews coming up. Shoff and I have been talking about Invincible. This week, we're going to be talking about the third episode of Invincible Season 2. And then also our Marvels review. We've got that on the site right now on YouTube. You can check it out or wherever you listen to podcasts. So check all of that stuff out here in the Vactor-Verse. And Shoff, I'm putting you on the spot. Do you have a closing for us?
I'm going to go with the classic we've been doing for Loki. Vactor and I low-key loved Loki, and you should too.